You're clean, aren't you? Except for your tower. You're a tower junkie, Roland.
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. If this is your first time listening, Tower Junkies is a podcast devoted to Stephen King and his magnum opus, the Dark Tower series. We discuss the themes, characters, and mythology of the series in Palaver episodes, and review the books and comic series in Kef episodes. We also discuss King novels related to the Dark Tower, non-Tower King novels, TV and film adaptations of King's work, and the latest news about potential Dark Tower-related adaptations. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com and follow us on every level of social media at Tower Junkies Pod. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and with me is my co-host, Tiny.
Hello.
Hi. You just turned 31.
I did yesterday.
Congrats.
I celebrated by working for 15 hours.
Welcome to your 30s.
Adulting.
God.
So I'm a little tie-tie.
Nice. Yeah, today was actually my first day back at work.
Oh, look at you.
After like 5 consecutive days off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was nice.
Nice.
It was so nice.
Impromptu 5-day weekend.
Yep.
I had a 4-day.
Nice.
Because we got like an ice storm on Friday.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to go all the way up to Muncie.
Nice.
And I was like, no. So I didn't.
Nice.
And they were like, that's fine. They didn't. Like, my boss really didn't care. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it was cool.
Nice. Well, today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about Sleeping Beauties, finally, because it's been out for a while. We've both finished it a while ago. We just haven't had time to sit down and record about it. But before we do that, do you have any Stephen King check-ins or anything?
You know, I wish I did. I have really been slacking on reading. Mm-hmm. It's because I kind of the new job-ish thing or promotion or whatever, working more hours, and you know, the holidays got to me.
Yeah.
The holidays.
How were your holidays?
They were great, actually.
Nice. Yeah, I think this is the first episode of Tower Junkies we're recording this year.
I think so.
Yeah,
it is. It definitely is.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's good. I'm glad. Did you get any like Stephen King related gifts or anything?
No, I didn't. Not that cool.
Huh. Dang. Yeah. Well, really me neither. I'm trying to think if I had any check-ins. I didn't make any notes of any. I do have one news item to talk about. Did you read the post that I shared? That was about the guy.
The fire?
Yeah, it was flooded basement.
I saw the headline. I didn't get a chance to read it.
Oh my God. Okay. So reading this article, I honestly, I don't like, I just felt so upset for this guy because it's freaking heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. So let me go ahead and read a little bit of the article here. It is heartbreaking. It's from the Bangor Daily News. It's, the headline is Original Stephen King Manuscripts Among Items Ruined by Downtown Water Main Break. And so I'll read a quick excerpt from here. Let's see. Okay. When Gerald Winters moved to Bangor from Thailand a little more than a year ago, he had one goal: to open a rare bookstore with every conceivable edition of Stephen King's books, including manuscripts and first editions, a collection that took him 2 decades to amass. But Winters was dealt a devastating blow Tuesday morning when a water main burst on Main Street almost directly in front of his business, Gerald Winters and Son. The broken main flooded his basement with chest-high water, soaking the pages of dozens of first and limited edition King books, galleys, signed copies, prints in different languages, rare ephemera, and 7 of King's original manuscripts.
Damn.
He kept the rare items some of which he traveled all over the world to collect, in his store to show people, not to sell them. And so it says he estimates he lost about 2,000 books and as many as 7 of King's original typed manuscripts, including Dolan's Cadillac, Maximum Overdrive, and The Eyes of the Dragon. He also collected rare and signed copies of works from J.R.R. Tolkien and George R.R. Martin, some that date back 80 years. And my God, just it goes on to say he estimates that only about 10% of his entire inventory was unscathed by the flood. Like,
Wow.
And then this broke my heart. Quote, "There's a first edition of Pet Sematary," he said, pointing to the waterlogged book sprawled on top of a box near the back of his basement. Like,
Ouch.
it's painful to read. Like, I can't imagine how just devastating that is.
No kidding.
Yeah, and there was a follow-up article that Stephen King said that he feels terrible for the guy, and he said eventually Stephen King is going to see if there's something that he can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what that is. I thought the phrasing was kind of funny, like, eventually I'll figure out if there's something I can do. But,
Kick the can down the road a little bit.
yeah. But yeah, it's really heartbreaking.
That sucks.
Yep. And then I thought I had some other King related check-ins. No, I guess I I bought the Blu-ray of It.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I watched it again. It holds up really well.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I guess I don't really have that many other check-ins or anything.
Okay.
Yeah. So do you want to dive into our thoughts on Sleeping Beauties?
Let's do it.
Okay, sweet. So, as normal, we're going to have a non-spoiler discussion, which I think in this case is just going to be a pretty broad, broad strokes feelings on the book, and then we'll dive into a more detailed spoiler discussion. So, here we go. The plot summary for Sleeping Beauties, per the plot description on Amazon, actually. I don't know why I almost said Yahoo. The plot description is as follows. In a future so real and near, it might be now, something happens when women go to sleep. They become shrouded in a cocoon-like gauze. If they are awakened, if the gauze wrapping around their bodies is disturbed or violated, the women become feral and spectacularly violent. And while they sleep, they go to another place, a better place, where harmony prevails and conflict is rare. So this was a novel that was written and co-written by Stephen and Owen King. It was their first collaboration, and I know that Owen King has at least one novel out called Double Feature.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't read it. I own it. Are you aware of it at all? Have you read it or anything?
Not at all.
Okay. I think it's actually kind of funny. I think it's about a guy who either inherits like an antique theater or something, but it's something about a man and his relationship with his dad. So I think that's kind of interesting. I think it's kind of a fractured relationship.
Okay.
But they collaborated for Sleeping Beauties. The way that it's described, or the way that they described in interviews and stuff, is that Owen pitched Stephen the idea. They were having dinner or something, and he was just like, "Oh, hey, what about this story where all the women on the planet fall asleep and they don't wake up?" And then Stephen kind of like went with that. I was like, "Yeah, that's a good idea. You should write it. Please write it." And then they eventually decided to just collaborate on it, and now we have Sleeping Beauties.
Mm-hmm.
This book is long.
It is.
It's about 1,000-pager.
Yeah.
So Tiny, in kind of broad, non-spoiler terms, how'd you feel about Sleeping Beauties, and did you audiobook it?
I did audiobook it.
Okay.
And I kind of hated it. Hate is a strong word.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't like it. I just to start with something positive, I love the idea that Stephen King and his son Owen collaborated on something. I think that's a cool idea. Two heads is better than one. Mm-hmm. But I don't necessarily think that the fact that it was a collaboration is what I didn't like about it. Like, I don't think that was detrimental to the story. Mm-hmm. At least I couldn't pick up on it if it was. But that was like one of the only things about it that I liked, is that it was a cool collaboration. But yeah, for me it was pretty disjointed, and I think it was a little out of character for Stephen King. The setting was out of character, and it seemed really pretty contrived to me. Just not very original. I didn't feel that kind of Stephen King's spin, because sometimes he'll use a premise that's not specifically original, like Salem's Lot. It's about a vampire. That's not original at all, but he makes it his own, and that's why that's a good book. But this, I really couldn't see the King of it all. It wasn't there for me, and I can get into some other reasons about why I didn't like it later. But the broad strokes are that it was just very disjointed and out of place, I think.
Interesting. And, I'm going to share a few of those same sentiments. I wasn't too crazy about the book, but I think I appreciated it, or I enjoyed it a bit more than you did. But I could definitely understand the kind of disjointed nature of it, because there are really good elements to it. Like the thing that Stephen King is kind of known for doing, or at least doing in these long form stories that span 1,000 pages or more, the kind of breakdown of society and breakdown of human instincts, I guess, in the face of a catastrophe, either local or global. Like, those things are kind of where he shines a lot in a lot of his past stories. And the moments where this book handles that aspect of the story, I think worked really well. It was very engaging. But some of the other elements just did not work for me that well. Like, a lot of the kind of character motivations and the drive of a lot of characters just didn't feel like it was seated properly for me. And it just left me kind of not really as invested emotionally in the story as I would have otherwise been with really any other Stephen King book. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's the worst I've read of his, but it's one that I definitely wasn't as engaged with as much as I would have liked to be.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's kind of just go right into a spoiler discussion then, because we could kind of beat around the bush and talk about it, but I think that it's been so, for the sake of our listeners, we actually finished reading it a while ago. Mm-hmm. So it's not as fresh in our minds. So I think that instead of just trying to just sidestep spoilers, we're just going to dive right into a spoiler discussion of Sleeping Beauties. So if you haven't read Sleeping Beauties yet, go ahead and turn this off and go read it or listen to it, and then come back and listen to our discussion of it. But if you have read it, then we are going to go into spoilers right after this little clip here from somewhere. I'm not sure what music I'm going to put here, but yeah, we're going to go into spoilers right now. Okay, Tiny, so we're spoilers on for Sleeping Beauties, and one of the things I noticed right off the bat, obviously, is that it's not a main story. It's set in Appalachia. Mm-hmm. Do they have a name for the town? I think it's a fictional town, is it?
Deming, West Virginia? Is that what it is?
Denny.
Did I just make that up?
It sounds right. It's somewhere in West Virginia, though. I don't know if it's real. I don't think it is. But Dueling, that's what it was.
Dueling, West Virginia.
Yes. Yeah, so it's a little different from what I'm expecting of a King novel. Not that every novel of his needs to be set in Maine or set somewhere in his main fictional universe, but it was kind of surprising. And for the most part I kind of liked it, like the kind of perspective that it takes of the chief or sheriff of the town, or is she the chief of police?
She's I think she's the sheriff of the county, actually.
Sheriff of the county. Okay.
Yeah.
Like that, I think the setting works well, in those opening pages where we have Eve basically massacring the drug dealers in the trailer. That felt like it established the tone of the setting and what's to come pretty well.
Yeah, especially with how graphic it was.
Yeah.
I think kind of the horror or the gore, if you will, is really it's pretty shocking in the book. like, you know, when several of the stories where men or boys try to remove the cocoon and they're basically like rabid zombies. Mm-hmm. It made me think of like 28 Days Later.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And that was pretty visceral, and I liked that, but it was all sort of secondary to the primary story, and none of that really none of that kind of stuff really like drove the story. It was just kind of a consequence.
And see, that I'll agree with you there. Like, that kind of seemed like stuff that was all going on in kind of the periphery of the story.
Right.
And this is jumping ahead quite a bit, but I don't know, it'll be more of a laid back review, I guess.
Yeah.
But like, I thought that was a really engaging plot point of, like, you know, these people, I think they were called like the fire brigade or brigadiers or something.
Right.
But they basically are setting these women on fire, and it's kind of like that's their response to this thing, is like, we're just going to murder these women in the hopes that, you know, everything will be okay or something. The logic and outline in the book makes a little bit more sense. It's not a logical action, obviously, but but just like this thing going on in the background, and then you get, like, that's an engaging idea, and then you get, you know, the Dr. Norcross kind of like him being in the prison and kind of in charge of the prison, and suddenly he's in charge of protecting Eve for really not really that clear of a reason. Like, she just kind of calls and tells him, like, oh, hey, I know all this stuff about you and everything, and you have to protect me. Otherwise, if they come and kill me, everything could be gone. And I'm just like that. It just kind of, that came out of nowhere, and that drove the rest of the book. And it was a thing that it just feels like it wasn't seeded enough. It was just very lacking for me.
Yeah, I think her character really missed the mark, which I hate to say because that's Stephen King's strong suit, is developing characters. But I think she was supposed to be like a Man in Black kind of character, like very, very manipulative and seedy and gross, for lack of a better word.
Sure.
But she, at least I listened to it on Audible, and so like the performance may have been off, but she had this very cheery, boppy kind of voice for her.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And that just seemed very out of place. And she's very flippant about a lot of things. And it's like, if you're such a big deal, why aren't you taking this more serious? And that's kind of the attitude I had towards her, towards that character.
Yeah.
And I love the character. Like, that's a cool character, and I like her dynamic in the story, but just the delivery of her and a lot of her dialogue and her attitude throughout it, I thought was just really misplaced.
See, yeah, and I agree with you partway. I thought that it was an interesting character choice to have her be this kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. Like you said, kind of this flippant, easygoing kind of personality.
That's the adjective that kept coming to mind, is flippant.
Yeah. I liked the performance itself. Like, I enjoyed that actual, the choice to play it that way in the audiobook. But I mean, it didn't do any favors to the character.
Yeah. See, I'm glad you brought up the performance of the reader, because I think that was my biggest issue with this whole thing. It was read by an actress named Mare in Ireland, who I'm not really familiar with at all. Apparently, she's most famous for Hell or High Water last year.
Oh, interesting.
Which was a fantastic movie, but I don't really recall her performance.
Huh.
I'm not familiar with her at all, but just to give her credit, she had a huge task with. Yeah. There's probably 30 or 40 speaking parts in this book. I mean, it's a huge cast of characters, and it's so long, and it's a regional dialect. That's a challenge, and it's very challenging. And I think she did fine. I think she actually did well in a lot of cases, but this is totally just my reaction to it. I don't even know if this is a legitimate criticism of her, but there was one character that she did. I don't even remember which one. I think it was I'm fairly certain it was one of the prisoners, the female prisoners, who was like extra trashy rednecky, and her voice was a dead ringer for Bobby Hill and King of the Hill.
Oh my
a
God.
dead ring, like, hey there, like
It really was.
and I could not get over it. I was like, she jumped the shark with that. I could not. And from there on out, I would hear little twinges of that in every other character, and I was like, nope, can't connect to anybody in this book.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily her fault. It's totally just my reaction to it, but that took me out of the book so far.
Yeah. I could see that, and I definitely, like, I am having, like, vivid, like, audio flashbacks in my mind right now, because it was exactly like that.
Yeah.
And that didn't really bother me at all. It was just, to her credit, yeah, it is, like you said, it is a lot of characters to keep straight and a lot of different vocal voices to do.
Well, and in addition to that character, I don't remember the character's name, but there was another one. It was again, I don't remember his name, but he was kind of pivotal. The prison guard who was fired for sexual misconduct, and later gets deputized, and he's very crass and a dick. Her voice for him it seemed like a textbook voice that a woman would use when she's imitating like a dumb oafish guy.
I could see that, yeah.
And he's a dumb oafish guy.
Right.
So like that's fitting, but
it seemed kind of
the performance was just very cliched. That's a good, just like a cliched performance for that kind of character.
Okay.
And again, I don't know what direction she should have taken it instead of that. I can't speak to that. So I'm trying not to criticize her too much. It's,
right.
Like I said, there's only so many voices you can do.
Right.
But those things just grated me. They just grated on my nerves, and I just couldn't get into the book for those reasons.
Interesting. Well, to kind of switch gears a little bit to the actual story, one thing that I actually did really enjoy for as long as it lasted in the book was the kind of not necessarily the breakdown of society, although that was a big part of it too, but the different accounts of the different women who were trying to stay awake as long as possible.
Yes.
And kind of the futility of it, and that they knew that like there was no way that they could escape it. It's just like they could pump themselves full of as much caffeine or drugs to keep themselves awake, but it's just, it felt like there was this this cloud hanging over it, that there's literally no way they can escape doing that. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about the book. And that's, I mean, obviously that's one of the reasons why I like the Nightmare on Elm Street series, or at least the first one, is that it plays with that type of story where it's someone who is stretching their minds and they're physically stretching themselves past their most fatigued moments, specifically because they don't want to go to sleep because they could never wake up.
Right.
That was one element that I really liked about it. That, and then let's I guess talk about that.
Yeah, I agree with that, because that's the kind of like minutia and detail that kept me into the story. And again, it's stuff that Stephen King does so well. It reminded me of Salem's Lot, when there's that kind of hour by hour, minute by minute accounting of a certain time period it kind of reminded me of that, except spread out over the whole book. So I enjoyed that as well. I think it's kind of like little micro stories within the main story.
Yeah.
That was good as well. I agree.
Now, when we've talked recently on the podcast, you have mentioned that it reminds you of another Stephen King book. Now, let me guess what it is.
Okay.
I have it down to like 2. Is it Under the Dome?
No.
No. Oh, interesting. Is it The Stand?
No.
No. Is it? I don't know.
It reminded me of Cell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which also wasn't very good.
No, I honestly think that might be my least favorite of
Really?
those books that I've read. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked Cell better than this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I really need to revisit Cell.
Yeah.
But
do you?
That's but that's really interesting, because I thought like, okay, well, it has to be Under the Dome because it's a society that's entirely like a small community that's entirely broken down, and then they have factions that rise up against each other. And then I thought The Stand, because there's this mythical person who is kind of pulling strings and trying to guide people one way or another. But no, it's just Cell.
You know, I didn't
400-page
yeah
zombie book that I don't even remember that much.
I didn't draw those similarities. Actually, I should have.
Interesting.
But I didn't. I think it's just because I was so disenfranchised with it, or so unhappy with it.
Yeah, Cell was kind of a tough book to get through.
Yeah.
For as short as it was.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I can definitely kind of feel. I can see that.
Yeah.
That being. I can see that connection.
Right. I feel like the story was sort of overcomplicated with a lot of things. I feel like it was juggling so much at the same time that none of the individual stories within the story got enough time. And so, like, I mean, there was like Dr. Norcross at the prison. There was Lila doing her thing on the other in the other universe or the other dimension, and then there was Lila.
Did they call it the other place?
I don't even remember. Yeah. Lila trying to figure out if her husband was cheating on her.
Yeah. Which that subplot, it felt
so pointless to me.
It really did. Like, it kind of felt like
it would have been so much more endearing if they were very close to each other and were like trying to get back to each other. Or,
that would have been nice.
That would have been, yeah.
Yeah. I kind of feel like that kind of felt like Owen and Steven were trying to fill time or fill pages until they could get to the next like act of the story.
Yeah.
Because as soon as it's pretty much resolved after like right around the time Lila falls asleep finally.
Right.
Right. But one thing that I kind of think, I don't know, I kind of wonder, in hindsight's 2020, I mean, maybe, I don't know, I kind of think that it would have been more interesting if they didn't have anything to do, like anything with the other place. If it was just solely about our world, the women falling asleep, and then this magical woman causing chaos and everything. I think that would have been a much more interesting type of story that could have led them to write better arcs for all the characters instead of jumbling it across two different realms.
Right.
Because as soon as we got introduced to the other place in it, I was like, there's another thing I need to keep track of. And it's weird, and it wasn't really working on me because I wasn't as invested in the characters that were involved in it. And it just felt like you said, it felt like it overly complicated the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one subplot that I actually really did like was Jared Norcross, his whole arc in the book, and how he was in love with his friend, I think Sarah, and like their connection I thought was very, very well done. I thought that was a very sweet kind of thing. But again, as soon as like she falls asleep and we get into this whole, like, I compared it to Under the Dome, where, you know, they have this place, the prison that they're kind of protecting people from, and then it eventually breaks out into this kind of war, this battle and everything. I just felt like I didn't feel a strong connection with really anything going on.
Yeah, and that was like the central conflict, really, was the whole the new sheriff, Frank, I think. Yeah, Frank. Kind of getting a posse together to take on the prison. That's kind of the central conflict, and it all revolved around Eve, and that was just given so little time. It really, I agree. I was intrigued by it every time. I think Frank was an ill-conceived character because it started out with the whole him with something with a dog that got hit by a car. He was such a convoluted piece of shit. I hated that. Sorry. It made me so mad because he ended up being such a pivotal character, and I was like, wait, who is this guy? Oh, this is the guy who got pissed off when the guy hit the dog with his car, and what? I was just like, what's happening? I want to say that Frank was the animal, what is the word? Animal control guy who he was overly protective of his daughter. Right. To the point where he was kind of violent a little bit. Yes. And he beat the shit out of the doctor, who then
ended up helping him, which I thought that was an interesting dynamic. But in a book that's cluttered with so many different elements that aren't connecting as well as they should, it kind of fell by the wayside.
Yeah. I think it would have made so much more sense to like the guy who kind of gets the posse together to basically just be like the number 2 at the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
And he would have been there from the beginning with Lila and right in the heart of the conflict instead of just this weird way in from a whole other story. That just threw me for the biggest loop, and I just had such a terrible concept of his character and what his motivation was throughout the whole freaking book, and he ended up being such a central character that it just kind of ruined that plot for me.
Yeah, I agree, and I mean, I feel like I don't really have that much else to really talk about with it.
Yeah,
but
I thought some of the descriptive writing was really good. Most notably, the part where I think it's Lila has the kind of like what she thinks is a hallucination of the tree. That was like really vivid to me, and I actually liked that. I liked that descriptive writing a lot.
Yeah, with the fox and everything, kind of goading her to follow him along.
Yeah, like very mythic. Yeah, mythic kind of writing. I enjoyed that a lot, and then
yeah, like with that. Sorry.
Well, in the descriptions at the they kind of kicked off the book at the trailer home when he was like, that was also just like really descriptive. And I enjoyed some of that stuff. There's other examples as well. But.
Like that whole like beginning part of the book is really, really engaging. It's maybe the most engaging part of the book for me because you have this mysterious woman that just slaughters these people in this trailer and blows up this meth lab. And then you have her walking in the middle of the street, if I remember correctly. Naked. And like Lila stops her, and then like she knows instantly like everything about her. Like your name is Lila Norcross and all that. And it's, I don't know. It's just, that's a really good way to open a story. It just did not follow through on anything really from that point on for me.
Right.
But the whole idea of, like you talked about Lila's quote-unquote hallucination, which at the time I thought, this is a really incredible scene because like this is really fascinating and like this is what it's like to be in the head of someone who has been awake for God knows how long. But then I like the kind of mythic aspect of it, but I feel like they doubled down on that way too much. Like the whole idea of Eve being able to control animals and talk to animals and like the whole rats thing, it felt like again in a book that they have tons of stuff that are just piling on for everything without any kind of sense of cohesion throughout it. It just kind of got lost in the shuffle. So like at the point where we are introduced to the tree and the fox and all of these animals and everything and the other place, it's like I'm kind of struggling to keep up, and I'm thinking like, is the fox really talking to her? Like, is this really a thing?
Right.
It just did not connect with me.
Me either. It seemed so out of place.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah. Do you have any other real thoughts on it? I feel like this is a super brief episode.
I know. I don't really know what else there is to say. Also, the part where I liked the idea of the women who fall asleep, their consciousness or whatever transports to this other dimension or something. I don't know. The upside down.
Right.
A cool idea. And I actually liked the execution a little bit, but I feel like again, that was rushed a lot because you had to make room for all these other storylines and characters. I think the quote unquote debate that the women have about whether or not to just basically start over in this dimension, which is kind of what they're presented with. You know, they're presented with the idea of you can choose to stay here and start over or go back. And I feel like there's not a ton of debate there, or the debate could have been fleshed out a lot more, could have been a lot more philosophical and metaphysical, but it wasn't. It was all pretty straightforward and brief, just very brief. And I wanted to see that. I wanted to sit in that a little more and see that explored. But I feel like Stephen King thrives in those moments, like like the Man in Black and Roland, their palaver towards the end of the Gunslinger. I wanted something like that where they're like,
Totally.
there's this like presenting of ideas, and that was almost entirely absent from that storyline.
There's a bit of almost a jump to, it's like the book misses a few steps in going from like, oh, there's this whole other realm, and then, oh, they have this whole little society, they're foraging and they're fending for themselves and stuff. It's like, where, like that is enough to, that concept is enough to cover its own book. Like, it just seems muddled down with everything else. And then, and I mean, maybe part of my kind of disconnect with the book also is that when it comes to like the prison thing, like I couldn't help but draw parallels in my mind to like The Walking Dead and the prison stretch in The Walking Dead, and how it just felt like it was kind of just it kind of felt like it was not rehashing it, but it just felt like it was borrowing from that type of thing. Like, oh, they have to defend this place, they have to protect this person. It just felt not developed well enough for me. Like, it wasn't developed well enough for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Real
quick. Mm-hmm. I think you've read this other Stephen King book. I think this is maybe a little bit of a spoiler for The Wind Through the Keyhole.
Oh, yeah, I've read it.
Okay. Was the tiger in this story the tiger from The Wind Through the Keyhole?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't pick that up on it. I didn't pick that up.
Okay. I haven't read The Wind Through the Keyhole.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, so maybe that'll be my next King book.
Ooh, yeah.
But I know that it involves an immortal tiger.
Oh, yeah.
But that's really all I know. I don't really know anything else about The Wind Through the Keyhole. And so I saw the tiger. I was like, ooh, is this the tiger?
Oh, yeah, definitely not.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah. I did not pick up on any Dark Tower references in this one.
Yeah. I thought that was it. Damn.
Nope. Yeah. What is your next Stephen King book going to be?
I have Different Seasons.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I've had that sitting on my table next to my bed for 2-3 months. Basically, since I finished this.
Right.
And I've started it twice. And I need to start it a third time and actually read it.
Right.
But I have Went Through the Keyhole. I have the hard copy of it. I need to... And it's not even that long, is it?
No, it's very brief.
Maybe that... But the thing is, again, it's all packed away in my basement.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, oh, hey, whatever you pick, that'll be the next one we review down the road.
Okay.
And I'm going through my library on Audible. Have you read the Bill Hodges trilogy? Mr. Mercedes, Finders Keepers, and
From a Buick 8? Is that one?
No.
No, but I haven't read any of those.
Interesting. Maybe that should be our next one.
Okay.
Like, Mr. Mercedes would be next, and then that can be like a project for this. We can read and review.
What's it called?
Trilogy.
The Bill what?
The Bill Hodges trilogy.
Okay, I'm not even familiar with that.
Yeah. It's Mr. Mercedes, Finders Keepers, and End of Watch. It's his his trilogy from the last, I think it's over the course of the last 5 years or so. He wrote 3 of them, all centered around this kind of grizzled older kind of detective guy named Bill Hodges. And yeah, I read Mr. Mercedes and I enjoyed it. There were some issues I had with it, but I rebought it on Audible to listen to it. So, and they have a TV series based on it that has 1 season. So yeah. Okay. Yep. So anyway, that's a little peek behind the curtain. I don't think we really have much else to say about Sleeping Beauties, though. Yeah, I don't think I do either. I know as soon as we stop recording, I'm going to remember something, but yeah. So that, I guess that'll do it for our review of Sleeping Beauties, and yeah. So let us know what you thought. Tweet us at Tower Junkies Pod, and like the Facebook page at facebook.com/Tower Junkies Pod, and yeah, let us know what you thought about Sleeping Beauties. Let us know what we should have touched on or what we didn't touch on here. Yeah, and we'll be back. I think next week we might... You know what I was honestly thinking about doing, Tiny? Is just doing like a palaver episode that's just us just talking about stuff, about the series, about the Dark Tower, because I know that we have a couple of Facebook posts or Facebook comments and tweets and at least one iTunes review that asks some questions about our opinions on some things. So we can kind of do that, kind of like a extended potpourri, Dark Tower style.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, be on the lookout for that. And I think that's going to wrap us up for Tower Junkies for our review of Sleeping Beauties. Before we go, is there anything else you want to add, Tiny?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, me neither. Well, thank you guys for listening, and long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.
Thank you for listening to Tower Junkies, a Dark Tower podcast presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find more of our episodes at TowerJunkiesPod.com, and you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or anywhere else podcasts are found. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can find ways to do that at TowerJunkiesPod.com/donate, or become a patron for Obsessive Viewer at Patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer for recurring donations with different reward tiers. Every donation goes toward paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. Any and all feedback on the podcast is encouraged. You can contact us by emailing us at matt@obsessiveviewer.com or by tweeting us at TowerJunkiesPod or at ObsessiveViewer and at ObsessiveTiny. You can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/TowerJunkiesPod. For more podcast content from ObsessiveViewer.com, check out Anthology, my solo side project podcast where I'm reviewing The Twilight Zone as a first-time viewer and exploring other classic and contemporary science fiction anthology television shows. You can find Anthology at anthologypod.com and anywhere podcasts are found. Finally, if you're philosophically curious, check out Tiny's side project podcast, The Secular Perspective, which explores the concepts of faith, religion, and existence from the perspective of secular hosts Chad and Amanda. You can find that at thesecularperspective.com and subscribe to the podcast on the app of your choice. Once again, thank you for listening to Tower Junkies, and we'll see you next time.